Polysecure, Attachment, Trauma, and Consensual Non-Monogamy, written by Jessica Fern, read by Sen Naomi Kirst-Schultz. Chapter 3, Part 2, The Nested Model of Attachment and Trauma. Social level. The next outer dimension in this nested model refers to the larger societal structures and systems that we live in, such as our economic, legal, medical, and political systems, as well as our religious institutions. It is at the social level that prejudice and oppression are institutionalized through the laws and power structures that either favor or discriminate against people based on age, race, sex, class, physical ability, sexual orientation, and relationship orientation, including monogamy and polyamory. Who is considered legally legitimate or not at a societal level, who has access to health care and education, whether or not you have rights to your children, or whether or not you are subject to the institutionalization of birth practices that can interfere with parent-child bonding, are all factors that can be traumatizing and attachment compromising. Additionally, whether or not we are a part of a legally protected class has massive implications for how safe and secure we feel in the world. The sociologist Johann Galtung refers to this as structural violence. Distinguished from physical violence, yet often intertwined, structural violence refers to a type of violence that is often invisible, yet intricately built into social structures. People's lives are complicated, confined, or even lost because of heterosexism, classism, racism, ableism, and sexism. Structural violence may be less obvious and direct than physical violence, but it is just as impactful and harmful. It creates a disparity between a person's potential reality, the life they could conceivably live, compared to the limited reality that they find themselves in. Societal issues, including homophobia, racism, sexism, and mononormativity, do not exist solely at the societal level. They influence and play out in very real and impactful ways, including the neighborhoods and homes we live in, which schools we have access to, and what funding they receive, how we approach or avoid others, and how we are treated by teachers, taxi drivers, or clerks at the grocery store. A black man is likely to have a very different experience of how safe and secure he feels when walking past a police officer than a white woman in the same scenario. In a time when mass shootings are rampant in the U.S., and amid the current political climate, a person of color who practices Islam will likely feel very differently walking into a mosque than a white Catholic person walking into a church. These societal experiences can then trickle all the way down to the self level, where social level issues become internalized as forms of shame or self-loathing, again hindering one's ability to bond, attach, and connect. Studies have shown that children with socioeconomic risks are more likely to develop disorganized attachment, and that children are at an increased risk of disorganized attachment when they are in non-maternal care for more than 60 hours a week due to parental work hours. Is it honestly possible to feel safe and secure in a capitalist society that defines our human value based on what we do and how much we make, rather than who we are? Is it honestly possible to feel safe and secure in a society that bombards us with messages asserting, even aggressing, that in order to be secure in ourself or with our place in the world, we need to acquire more money, more religion, more objects, more products, more body-altering procedures, or more property? Society teaches us how to love and who is worthy of love via the media, commercials, and through institutionalized practices such as tax benefits for married couples. Relationships are defined as valuable, and potential partners are evaluated as worthy based on how much money is spent on dinner, date nights, vacations, diamonds, and wedding arrangements. Flipping to the other extreme and thinking that money doesn't matter or is unimportant in a relationship can also be damaging, since we live in a society where money is a basic requirement for survival. It's difficult to show up and thrive in relationships when we can't feed ourselves, when we can't pay the bills or afford basic health care. In addition to the ways that capitalism can influence who and how we love, in couples therapy I regularly witness how patriarchal values and gender discourses eclipse intimate connection and attachment. Developing healthy relational attachment requires feelings of safety and security. While significant achievements have been made for women over the past several decades, many women still experience sexism, objectification, invisibility, exclusion, or even servitude within their most intimate relationships. My generation was taught that girls can do anything that boys can do, but most of my peers still feel the need to have to shave, to pluck, to color, to tint, to laser, to push up or add extensions to parts of their bodies just to achieve baseline attractiveness and feel good enough to walk out the door every day. For many women, feminism has added more criteria for what it means to be a woman. In commenting on how increased racial and ethnic diversity in Hollywood has had a positive change on body image, the comedian Tina Fey credits women like Jennifer Lopez and Beyoncé for revising the definition of American beauty. Being skinny is no longer the only ideal, but having a larger butt and thighs is now also considered desirable. These changes have definitely added more nuance to our beauty standards and represent positive developments, particularly for racialized women, larger-bodied women, trans women, and disabled women who have typically been found wanting or lesser than in comparison to the narrow beauty norms of privileged thin, cisgender, able-bodied white women. However, Tina Fey points out these changes did not necessarily emancipate all women to embrace their body as it is. But rather, quote, added to the laundry list of attributes women must have to qualify as beautiful. Now, every girl is expected to have Caucasian blue eyes, full Spanish lips, a classic button nose, hairless Asian skin with a California tan, a Jamaican dance hall ass, long Swedish legs, small Japanese feet, the abs of a lesbian gym owner, the hips of a 9-year-old boy, the arms of Michelle Obama, and doll tits. Unquote. In addition to inflated beauty standards, women are now also expected to be career-driven, achievement-orientated, financially independent, and a competent badass in the boardroom, the bedroom, the kitchen, and the nursery. On the flip side, the plights of men are often dismissed and unseen, since men are regarded as the ones wielding all the privilege and power. But what happens when the same societal structures that grant men superiority also deny them the full range of human emotions and threaten their status as men if they experience even the slightest form of sensitivity, vulnerability, or indication of their needs for love, emotional safety, and tenderness? Basically, if men admit to having any attachment needs at all, what happens when men are paralyzed by shame and made to feel unworthy of love and partnership unless they meet certain masculine expectations around financial or professional success? And what happens to a person's ability to feel safe and connected when they are transgender or do not fit in the gender binary at all? Many of the personal problems and relationship struggles that we face are actually societal issues, impairing our ability to bond, connect, and love in secure ways. Global or collective level. The earth is alive. It is where we come from, it is what nourishes life, and it is where we will return to. If we are going to talk about attachment relationships, it would be remiss not to mention our original mother, Mother Earth. For many of us, our relationship to the environment is dissociative and overly abstracted. Even though the earth is the very ground upon which we move, we still see it as separate, unaffected, and removed from our daily existence. Growing up in New York City, it was frequently modeled to me that the ground was not a place to revere or enjoy. This was mostly because actual areas of earth and grass in the city were few and far between. What I saw instead was that the earth was something to pour concrete over, to drive over, to blast through, to take for granted, or the place to literally throw your trash. The earth was more of a means to an end, a resource to take from instead of a living entity to be in relationship with. I think it's safe to say that in the US, many people have a dismissive attachment to the earth. They downplay its importance, cutting off any potential experience of wisdom or intimacy that could be gained through connection with the natural world. On a daily basis, people are immediately confronted with the sudden and overwhelming realities of our planet through fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, tornadoes, tsunamis, volcanoes, pandemics. Needless to say, it can be traumatizing to lose loved ones, homes, and entire communities in natural disasters. Access to post-disaster aid and support can also be further traumatizing when poverty, racism, or public policy further influence who, how, and when people are helped. In a 2019 TED Talk, How Climate Change Affects Your Mental Health, Britt Ray articulates the ways in which natural disasters can lead to increased PTSD and suicide in survivors. She addresses how our changing environment threatens our social, mental, relational, and spiritual health, and how some psychologists are treating post-traumatic stress in regard to climate change. Zioa Woodbury explains that humans are being confronted with a new type of trauma that has never been confronted before, one that is ongoing and continuous without immediate solutions, and which calls into question our shared identity as humans. In an article titled Climate Trauma, Towards a New Taxonomy of Traumatology, he writes, quote, "Climate trauma is an ever-present existential threat with a bevy of constant cognitive reminders, melting ice caps, eroding shorelines, waves of homeless refugees, the ravaging storms, floods, and fires broadcast into our homes 24/7, and the constant roll call of disappearing species, vanishing rainforests, and dying coral reefs. There are certain things in life that we cannot, quote-unquote, unsee, and climate trauma indelibly stamps our consciousness in that way, fundamentally altering the way we see the world and our place in it," unquote. Not everyone is currently or directly in harm's way of natural disasters, but many of us still experience climate trauma or a preoccupied attachment to the earth by living in daily anxiety about the state of our water, air pollution, the state of forests, the loss of biodiversity, and the extinction of animal species, just to name a few. For one of my clients, the bulk of our therapy has revolved around her environmental anxiety and its impact on every area of her life. When she wakes up every day, she looks through her window to what she sees as a world in peril. She is personally pained by the manifold ways that humans are mistreating the planet. Even though she has everything she needs on a physical level, she often tells me that if the environment isn't okay, then I'm just not okay. She feels intensely unsafe and unstable, living in a world where a natural disaster could occur at any time, and where the future sustainability of human life seems so precarious. This particular client illuminated for me how the current state of the earth has changed the way in which some people orient to their personal future and even their individual sense of purpose. Where for many it appears to be a given truth that we are working towards a better future for the next generations, infusing our individual life with a larger sense of meaning. For this client, the future was no longer something secure that she could hang her sense of meaning and fulfillment on. Another client of mine always felt a strong sense that the meaning of his life had everything to do with becoming a father. Ever since he could remember, he desired to be a dad, seeing parenthood as his greatest contribution to this life. When he learned more about global issues such as overpopulation and food scarcity, it seriously called into question whether having a child made sense for him anymore. His concern for the environment ignited a personal identity crisis as he contemplated who he would be and what he would do if having children no longer seemed viable or wise from an environmental perspective. His worry for the planet created a state of constant urgency in his internal nervous system and hypervigilance that disrupted his work and marriage. With both of these clients, I found that by treating their attachment anxiety with the environment the same way I would work with relational attachment trauma, they were both able to rebuild an inner sense of safety and security. Each of them developed a larger felt sense of trust in the wisdom and support that the earth has to offer, while also feeling more empowered rather than overwhelmed or complacent about their environmental efforts. Finally, in talking about the global level, it is also extremely important to highlight collective trauma. This is the traumatic impact that happens to societies over multiple generations when experiences including slavery, genocide, famine, war, or the subjugation of women occur. The individuals who experience these events are undeniably impacted, but the effect also transcends the individual, altering the course of the world in unfathomable and incalculable ways. Thomas Hübl is the co-founder of the Pocket Project, a non-profit organization dedicated to the healing of collective trauma. He posits that we currently exist in a traumatized collective, and the main symptom of being in a traumatized world is that we feel separate from each other, from the world, from spirit, and from the natural world as a whole. These symptoms are not just present in the collective or even individual psyches, but can become evident through actual changes in our genetic expression. Unresolved trauma from previous generations can alter the expression of DNA, making subsequent generations more susceptible to certain health issues, to increased anxiety, PTSD, and wariness to danger. This means that certain mental health or physical symptoms that you are experiencing today at the self level may have actually been inherited from collective traumas that your ancestors went through generations ago. Traumas arise in many forms over multiple generations, and how each person and their nervous system responds to the very same incident can vary greatly in degree. Trauma and attachment wounds separate us from feeling safe and secure, and left unaddressed, they can create serious impairments in our ability to connect, respond, or even function. All of these levels can cause threats, ruptures, and violations that activate the attachment system. This means that each level has the potential to impact how safe we feel in our bodies with others, and in the world at large. Living in regular chaos, fear, or uncertainty is not conducive to secure attachment. At each separate level, we can look at a potential trauma occurring at that level and see how it then permeates to all of the levels above and below. Traumas that continue to occur at the levels of culture, society, and the collective cannot entirely be healed by the individual, but that does not mean that they are beyond cleansing and repair at the self and relationship levels, where we do have more power to take responsibility for our own healing. As I've already alluded to, healing is available to all of us at these different levels too. When ruptures occur at one level, we can focus our healing on that specific level, but we must also utilize the repair and respite that the other levels have to offer us, whether through self-compassion, a warm embrace from a loved one, a home where we can relax, being acknowledged and accepted within a community, receiving legal rights or benefits that were previously denied, or a quiet walk in nature to restore our inner equilibrium. This has been Polysecure, Attachment, Trauma, and Consensual Non-Monogamy, Chapter 3, Part 2, The Nested Model of Attachment and Trauma. Written by Jessica Fern, read by Sen Naomi Kirst Schultz. Thanks for reading along.